Zenless Zone Zero. It's the most recent horror game, and I've been playing it since launch, and I just want to give my general thoughts, not necessarily on the game itself, but more specifically on why I think Zenless Zone Zero, at least in my opinion, has the opportunity to be one of the better horror communities. Now, don't get me wrong, I think if you're browsing the subreddit at all, ZZZ official, it's pretty bad. I think it's mostly from the moderation side of things, like not necessarily they're not doing their job, but more so, I don't know who's in charge of the mod team, but they're making decisions, not good ones. They're trying. They're doing things. These, as in the subreddit itself, the official one, ignore that. Unofficial, in my opinion, is the better Zenless Zone Zero subreddit. But regardless of circumstance, I believe that because of the nature of ZZZ, I don't think it's going to reach that potential of Genshin Impact or Honkai Impact Third, or more specifically, Honkai Star Rail. I think Honkai Impact Third had a lot of popularity because it shares similar names, similar characters to Honkai Star Rail. But beyond that, I think it's for the better. I don't necessarily know where a lot of individuals stand on their perspective of the HoYo communities. I hope that if we're referring to the developers and the state of the game, that this is going to follow the HSR route rather than the Genshin route. That being with the quality of life for game 1.1 sounds good, but my main concern is that quality of life things that were initially supposed to launch with the game? Because in my opinion, this is one of the more, not necessarily lackluster, but it's very different from the other HoYo games. We have a smaller roster. We still don't have a proper defense idea. You know, Ben is the only character existing right now. Seth is coming up in the future, but still, most teams just aren't done. We have a few stunners, sure, but Koleda and Lycan are the premier 5-star stunners. So if you're ignoring them, you get Anby for free. Yeah, sure. But beyond that, who are you using? It isn't to say they need to have every element and every character filled out in the game. I don't think that's true. But this is to say from me, and in my opinion, as someone who's played since launch of Genshin, since launch of HSR, this is one of the more light launches we've had. And I think a lot of individuals are looking at it from the perspective of, oh, how does this compare to W? WW's combat is more hands-on. I think WW has better combat when you can get into it. I think ZZZ runs into two issues. First off, I'm just not gonna lie, this Inchnaut system on the surface was very nice, but then kind of fell away when you had to explore with the TV system, which in my opinion is pretty bad. But hey, you can enjoy that, and if you do, perfectly fine. I just think there should be an equal balance of TVs to combat, because as of right now, it seems like it's 70 to 80% TV system and 20% combat. But that's just me. But beyond that, I think the primary thing that you need to look at with Zenless Zone Zero is twofold. First off, this in terms of design perspectives and just from characters alone has some of the more sexualized characters within HoYoverse games. I think especially if we're looking at some of the characters like Lucy, for example. A lot of people like Lucy. And the fact that the official subreddit just basically bans any mention of Piper is, in my opinion, pretty funny. First off, yeah, but on a secondary standpoint, I do believe that if the official subreddit continues to do that, and subsequently if the community itself is already dissatisfied with how this game compares to any other HoYoverse games, this is going to have a smaller community around it. I've already mentioned, the smaller your community, the better it is. I think that one of the bigger issues with a lot of the HoYoverse games is that they're so mainstream, you don't really get people who are passionate about the game, you get people who are just casually playing it. And casuals have an entirely different perspective from most of the hardcore players. I'm not saying Zenless Zone Zero will have hardcore players. I'm not saying that's what the entire community will be. But what I am saying is, if this game ends up being smaller than the other HoYoverse games, you have a lot of the bigger creators who will just leave and cover WW, cover Genshin for Notland, cover just art. You have, as a result of that, smaller creators getting an opportunity to build their following. I think an example could be, if we're using other HoYo games, all of the smaller Genshin content creators who got their big jump from Genshin Impact. We didn't really have that. With Tower of Fantasy, with Aegis, with something like WW, it just resulted in a shift of, oh, all the people who loved Genshin and covered Genshin just came over there. And so a lot of the smaller channels who were more dedicated to that game just didn't get that coverage and didn't get that opportunity to really shine. Now, don't get me wrong, some of them may still be there now, in WW, for example, but no one really got that big boost. And so I think if this game goes down the route of having characters that push a lot of people away, it goes down a route of not necessarily making the combat to the extent and length of WW, but more so focusing on what they do well, what HoYoverse games have pretty much always done well. Character designs. Maybe you're going for the characterization within the in-stories more. Maybe you're focusing a lot more on DMs, and you're adding a lot more quality of life to the animations themselves and to this menu. If they focus more on that, and they don't necessarily inherently change the combat to try and match WW, but try and make it something unique, then yeah, it's not going to appeal to a mainstream audience, but it's going to have a bit more of a dedicated fan base that specifically like this game. And the quality of life is obviously something good too. I think a lot of individuals have issues with characters like Lucy, Soukaku, Anby, Korin, these designs here, and even Koleda. But beyond those, if you have an issue, and if individuals do have an issue, they're just gonna fucking leave the game. They realistically weren't gonna care about the state of the game anyway. Like, let's be honest here, the people who do complain about Genshin not having more diverse skin tones, they don't play the game. Not necessarily if they don't play the game, so they have no right to complain. More so a concept of they don't play the game, so their opinion is entirely based on what they see first, and that's just, oh, a character model, and not anything else. And so if ZZZ continues down the route of throwing these character designs in, improving on the base game, and not necessarily trying to appeal to a wider audience or to the biggest audience possible, and just says, hey, this is what we have, this is what we're going to do, we like it, and a lot of the bigger creators fuck off, I wholeheartedly believe this is going to be a better community than Genshin. I think that as of right now, if we're looking at the official subreddit, then yeah, this is a pretty bad stance. But if we're looking at the unofficial, which in my opinion is a lot more of the unfiltered opinions of the community itself, people do like the game. And there are a lot of individuals who simp for Juyon, who simp for Nekomata, who simp for Piper, or even just like Piper's design and can't talk about it. And so as a result, I think that at least from my interactions and from my experience with people who like this game, who play this game, who want this game to get better, they're going to stick with it. People who were just here for the biggest gacha game, they're gonna leave. And they were never gonna stay long term. And they were never gonna wear it to begin with, let's be honest here. I want Zenless Zone Zero to be better as a game and as a community. I just think it has the big issue of being attached to the rest of the miHoYo roster, which automatically makes it a difficult game to get into because it's very difficult to enjoy the fan base it's attached to. But with designs like Piper, with designs like Lucy, who tend to go more towards that Blue Archive route, I believe that there is a chance that this game could filter out into a better community offering a better experience. I think that as a result of having the miHoYoverse names attached to it, it's going to have drama. Because apparently every horse game has drama. Every 2 weeks, basically speaking. But that doesn't inherently mean the community is going to be as bad as Genshin, as bad as HSR, as idiotic as both of them combined. And maybe the content creators will be better too. But tell me your opinions. Either way, my name is Ren. I am a avid Nekomata main. She is my favorite character within the game, and Koleda and Lucy are my others. I will be building up Korin. Expect build guides for these characters in the future. Subscribe if you're interested and you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.